All right, class. So today we're going to do the Roto Brush exercise here to show you the difference between doing the traditional masking and using the Roto Brush. I've went ahead and added the Roto Brush, but to do so, what I'm going to do is basically just go back out here to my composition. I've got my footage imported as a comp. I'm going to select the Roto Brush tool up here in the toolbar, and I'm going to double click on my layer composition, and it's going to give me this green cursor now. The green cursor is the additive, so it's going to be selecting what items that you want to keep in your frame. So we're going to paint over the edges and things like that of this guy, very similar to what we were doing in our mask technique. So we painted that, and as you see, boom, there's no magic answer on what, where to select all the time, just kind of getting in there and selecting it first, and then we'll come in and refine it. So we've still got some areas that are missing, so we'll come in and add those as well, around here around the hat band. We've got some overlap areas, things that we don't want. Holding Alt will give you the negative subtract tool, so we can go in and select the elements we don't want to keep, and that'll trim that back. We're missing some elements over here on his shoulder. And again, this tool uses a contrast level of pixels to pick up the variations between those lines. On a clip like this, you might have some difficulty, and that's just part of something that you face with the tools itself, that it can't necessarily recognize it. But we will do the best we can to pull this key on this clip. Again, organic objects might be a little bit more difficult. Polygon, square shapes, things like that might be a little easier to pull. But this is something that you'll face with any of these clips that you may try to rotoscope out. You may decide, okay, well, rotoscoping with a mask will be better, or rotoscoping with the roto tool might be a little bit quicker. But they do have individual trade-offs that you'll have to kind of look into and consider. So this is just to kind of showcase how that works. Now, as I have selected those elements I'm keeping, you'll notice that this Roto Brush down here has added these markers, these sort of chevron markers. That is a sort of a pre-render. This element you can drag out and render more, but it only gives you a small limited selection, so that if you do have to come back and touch up areas or select areas, or areas start going missing, you will want to go back to the frame where that starts to happen. So the specific frame. So here I'm starting to lose some of my hat and some of my shirt. So I want to come in here and paint that back in and select those elements here. Just like that, and those are going to clean up those edges there. So make sure you try to get all these elements done and fixed in sequence, because again, going back, we'll have to re-render all of this, which does take up more time and more resources on the computer. So now that I've got that done, I can hit play or the space bar here, and I'm noticing my hat's going missing again. Again, this is a contrast pixel issue. So, the faintness is getting to where it's difficult for the computer to recognize that that's an object. It's a little out of focus. And we will go ahead and continue down that path. And we may face this quite regularly, but again, it's just as little as coming in and adding it back. So what I'm going to do for now is I'm just going to stop. I'm gonna continue going and then just speed this up so you can see kind of what I've done. But just be aware of these elements as I go through. All right, and once we get a general roto done around that, we think it's pretty decent. Now, again, like I said before, one of the things to always kind of consider when you're working with footage is the quality of the footage, how compressed it is, what you're going to have to do to it to make the decision whether you're going to use a Roto Brush tool or the mask tool. This is going to be key, as far as how much work it's going to take, as well as, how well it works out for you. What I would do now at this point is I'd start kind of taking a look at my, I can come back to my composition and sort of preview what we're looking at. And we have, a little bit of chatter kind of coming around the hat and things like that, as well as the body. We can increase a selector here to reduce the chatter. And that will, again, it's going to slow down some of those sort of like pop on and pop off movements. It'll also increase the amount of time it takes to render, because the computer's having to think a little bit more on how to do some of that stuff. We can work on, shifting the edge whichever direction if we think we're a little too tight, or, we're a little too wide on the mask. You can extract or expand or contract that. Increasing the contrast filtration will affect how it pulls that key, the mask there. So if I increase that, it'll also help kind of around some of those areas, as well as the feather aspect, like we did in the mask tool. The feather aspect will clean up around that mask, and it might help make things feel a little more organic. Going too high on it will also, make it feel a little too fake. So we want to be careful with that. And so we've still got some missing areas. If we've got motion blur in here, we can engage that. Again, that's going to also take up more resources to work on that as well. So for right now, I'll leave that off, and I'll work on cleaning up my edges and, seeing what else I can do to improve this here a little bit more. Each of these is just a little fine tweak that you'll want to work on to see how well you can kind of clean it up a little bit more. Now, again, depending on the level of perfection that you need from the clip, this is going to be something where you have to figure out how far you need to go, or what's needed, or if you want to rework it a little bit more. But that's the basic gist of how that works. I'm going to suggest trying it on this clip as well, but also maybe grabbing some others and testing it out on that and seeing how that works for you. Don't be afraid to play around with this a little bit. It is time consuming. It does take time. A key thing to it is also saving your project. Save it often. Adobe will crash on you if you don't save it, and it's not going to recover as much of it. So keep things saved and saved often. So I'm going to call this the Roto Brush, and save that there. And that'll at least keep, if for some reason After Effects does crash, I've got that saved. One of the things to help kind of look at stuff is to put a solid object behind it. On these, you can put like a green screen almost behind it. So finding, a bright green and dropping that behind it will help you see those edges a little bit more too, if the black background doesn't do the trick for you. So, we've got, like I said, we've got some shifting and some edge blending and things like that we can work on. But once we're done with this, let's say we're feeling good, this is where we want to leave it. We can hit the freeze button, and the freeze button will then lock that into place, and we won't be able to work with it anymore after that unless we undo that. So that's kind of a tool there to help us work on that. You have some additional search radius settings up here that might help when you're working with this. The edge detection, you can favor predicted edges, balance between the two, or favor current edges. This may be something here that would be helpful, especially around this hat level that we were dealing with. you know, we could say instead of doing a balance, we'd favor predicted edges, you know, and come in here and re-render some of this stuff. But once you work on that stuff, you'll want to freeze it. It'll freeze out, and then you could render that out once it's done, and you'll be good to go. So that'll be it for this session here. Again, freezing it and then going ahead and outputting the composition, and we'll see you in the next lecture.